So Alfred Adler is one of the more interesting um, psychoanalysts in the history of psychoanalysis. And he too was part of the Wednesday group, splintering off from Freud to form what he called individual psychology. It presents an optimistic view of people while resting heavily on the notion of social interest, that is, the feeling of oneness with all of humankind. Picture of Alfred Adler. Um, because of his breach in beliefs, the relationship between Freud and Adler was tenuous. Freud saw all human motivation reduced to sex and aggression, while Adler saw people as being motivated mostly by social influences and a striving for superiority or success. Freud assumed that people have little or no choice in shaping their personalities, whereas Adler believed people are largely responsible for who they are. A stark contrast. Freud's assumption that present behavior is caused by past experience was directly opposed to Adler's notion that present behavior is shaped by people's view of the future, a teleological approach. And Freud placed heavy emphasis on unconscious components of behavior, while Adler believed that psychologically healthy people are aware of what they are doing and why they're doing it. Some background: born in Vienna around the same time as Freud. He was sickly and had health issues throughout his life. He also had a rivalry, oddly enough, with a sibling named Sigmund. He, like Freud, was Jewish, and his young brother died in childhood, so loss really affected him deeply. Freud and Adler reacted differently to different or similar events in their lives. Like the death of siblings, Freud felt guilty and self-reproach. Adler felt a challenge to overcome death. In relation to families, Freud felt close to parents and other adults, whereas Adler felt close to siblings. In terms of social relations, Freud felt mostly comfortable in one-on-one situations, whereas Adler felt comfortable in groups. In fact, incidentally, he used to do child therapy in group settings. In terms of professional organizations, Freud had tight control of his organization, whereas Adler was very loosely organized. And finally, in terms of academic attitudes, Freud was a hardworking, good student, and Adler was essentially not that good of a student and pretty unmotivated, although brilliant. Adler was nearly an early member of the Wednesday group, but left the group because of differences he saw in motivating factors of the psyche. He saw physical deficiencies as the foundation of human motivation, not sex. He formed the Society of Free Psychoanalytic Study, which later became the Society for Individual Psychology. Adler suggested that social interest and compassion are the cornerstones of human motivation. Adler was impressed by Americans and admired their optimism and open-mindedness, unlike Freud. Adler was married, had 4 children, 2 of whom became psychiatrists. Adler was also interested and promoted gender equality, so one of the first analysts to do that. Adlerian theory suffered from a number of critical problems, including poor organization, the fact that he was not a particularly good writer, and that much of his work was incorporated into other writers' work as well. His theory is simple and parsimonious. In terms of an overview, the one dynamic force behind people's behavior is the striving for success or superiority. People's subjective perceptions shape their behavior and personality. Personality is unified and self-consistent, so he struggles with the idea of something missing. The value of all human activity must be seen from the viewpoint of social interest. How does it serve others? The self-consistent personality structure develops into a person's style of life, which we'll talk about in a minute. And the style of life is molded by a person's creative power. So this is an evolving, ongoing process of personal and psychological development. Tenet 1, the striving for superiority. Tenet 2 is that people's subjective perceptions shape their behavior and their personality. He described what he calls fictionalism, which suggests that we create a goal early in life, and a goal guides our style of life and gives unity to our personalities. much like a child might want to be a fireman growing up as a small child. An example might be that men are superior to women as a fictionalism. This teleological approach suggests that we are focused on our future goals or ends and not concerned about how the past produces some present effect. Physical deformities suggest that because we are small, weak, and inferior, we develop a fiction or a belief system about how to overcome these physical deficiencies and become big, strong, and superior. One might attain these, however, and still act as if um, they are the former. We're going to come back to as if statements in a little bit. Some people use the inferiorities and move towards psychological health and a useful style of life, while others overcompensate and are motivated to subdue or retreat from other people. Physical deficiencies alone do not cause particular style of life. They simply provide present motivation for reaching our future goals. And then three is the unity and self-sufficiency of personality. And it suggests that each persona is unique and indivisible, and that the notion of inconsistent behaviors does not exist. Adler suggests several ways that the entire person operates with unity and self-consistency. One is called organ dialect. The deficient organ expresses the direction of the individual's goals. They could be conscious or unconscious. Conscious thoughts are um, those that are understood and regarded by the individual as helpful in striving for success, while unconscious thoughts are those that are not helpful. Whether people's behavior leads to a healthy or unhealthy style of life depends on the degree of social interest they develop during childhood years. 10 and 4 is social interest, and the value of all human activity must be seen from the standpoint of social interest, a feeling of oneness with humanity. We're all in this together. Social interest is a natural condition of the human species and the adhesive that binds society together. It begins early in development with the family and the group of families that the family belongs to. It originates uh, in the mother and child relationship and continues in the father and child relationship. It's believed that these parental relationships overwhelm the effects of heredity in the child's social environment. Social interest is the sole criterion of human values and is the only gauge to be used in judging the worth of a person. Healthy individuals are generally concerned about other people and have a goal of success that encompasses the well-being of all people. And 5 is that of self-consistency. And this personality structure develops into the person's style of life. The flavor of a person's life, it includes the person's goals, their self-concept, their feelings of others, and the attitudes toward the world. It is the interaction of environment, heredity, and the person's creative power that is important. People with healthy, social, useful style of life, express their social interests through action. So they not only talk the talk, but they walk the walk. 10 and 6 is that the style of life is molded by a people's creative power. It is the freedom to create his or her own lifestyle. All people are responsible for who they are and how they behave, which is a really powerful statement. Creative power places them in control of their own lives, is responsible for the final goal. It determines their method for striving for that goal and contributes to the development of social interest. Creative power is a dynamic concept that implies movement. People who are much more than a product of their environment and heredity. They are creative beings who not only react to their environment, but also act on it and cause it to react to them. We are our own architects and can build either a useful or useless lifestyle. Again, a profound statement. He sees abnormal development as uh, important to be dealt with. One factor that underlies all types of maladjustments in underdeveloped social interests. Neurotics set their goals too high. They live in their own private worlds and have a rigid and dogmatic lifestyle. Incidentally, neurotic is not in the DSM-5 anymore, so all psychoanalysts have been kind of marginalized. External factors contribute to maladjustment and can include exaggerated physical deficiencies. These lead to exaggerated feelings of inferiority because they overcompensate for the inadequacy, which leads to being overly concerned for themselves and lack of concern for others. Incidentally, these deficiencies don't have to be physical, they can be emotional as well. Another external factor is a pampered lifestyle. It lies at the heart of most neuroses. Lack of social interest because they want to perpetuate their parasitic, pampered relationship they have with their parents. They're extremely discouraged, indecisive, oversensitive, impatient, and have exaggerated emotions. They'll feel unloved, and because their parents do too much for them, they encourage feelings of being incapable of solving their own problems. And so this is not a healthy lifestyle. Neglected lifestyle is the third one. These children feel unloved and unwanted. They too lack social interest, and with many the same characteristics of a pampered individual, with the addition of suspicions of others and seeing others as potentially dangerous. So safeguarding techniques are protective devices that enable people to hide their inflated self-image and maintain their current style of life. The difference incidentally, between safeguarding techniques and ego defense mechanisms of Freud is that safeguarding techniques are conscious. The person's well aware of them, whereas ego defense mechanisms for Freud are unconscious. These ones occur only with neurotics and shield the individual from public disgrace, and they include excuses, a person that says yes, but, or only if, aggression to safeguard their exaggerated superiority complex, depreciation, undervaluing other people's achievements, accusation, blaming others for one's failures and maybe seek revenge, self-accusation, self-torture and guilt with the goal of hurting others. It is the converse of depreciation with the same goal of superiority. So that's always the end target, is to feel superior. Withdrawal is a halting personality development by running away from difficulties through distance, and it includes moving backwards like regression, safeguarding one's fictional goals of superiority by psychologically reverting to a more secure period of life, standing still, which is not as severe as moving backwards, not being responsible and not doing anything, hesitating, that is vacillating or procrastinating or being too compulsive. And the fourth one, type of withdrawal, is constructing obstacles. By overcoming self-created obstacles, the individual preserves their self-esteem and their prestige. And the person, remember, with all these safeguarding techniques, is aware that they're doing this when you point it out to them. He also developed the idea of masculine protests. Adler believed that psychic and physical life of women is not much different than that of men, and the culture and history help to create any differences that do exist. The overemphasis on being manly is called masculine protest. Boys and girls are taught these differences very early on. Freud's and Adler's view on femininity are reflected in their choice of wives. Adler's wife was very assertive and a big part of his life, whereas Freud's was very subservient. Here's just a comparison of the safeguarding techniques and defense mechanisms that we've already talked about. There are some applications of individual psychology. One of them is called the birth order effect. I put a video in the learning materials about birth orders. Interesting, that basically says that the order that you're born in sort of determines many personality styles that you grow up with. Early recognition with these early memories are usually consistent with the person's present style of life, and their subjective account of these experiences yields clues to their understanding both of their final goal and their present style of life. Early recollections affect how one sees oneself. They're part of that fiction. Early recollections do not determine the style of life, but rather early recollections are simply shaped by the present style of life. And there's some evidence that some of these memories may not actually be true. Of course, dreams is a big choice for most psychoanalysts. They cannot foretell the future, but they provide clues for solving future problems. Everything can be different. That is, if everyone interpretation doesn't feel right, by try another. Dreams can be self-deceptive and are best interpreted by someone besides the dreamer. In terms of psychotherapy, psychopathology results from having the lack of courage to face your lifestyle and your potential, exaggerated feelings of inferiority, and underdeveloped social interests. So obviously the purpose of psychotherapy is to enhance courage, to lessen feelings of inferiority, and encourage social interest. These are very practical and easily done in some cases. This is difficult in some patients because they hold on to existing comfortable views of themselves. I mentioned before about as if. So to overcome resistance, the therapist simply asks a question like, what would you do if you were cured immediately? What would you do if this happened or that happened? And believe it or not, some people don't ever think about that. Your questioning them to do that actually can have a profound effect on them. What people do with what they have is more important than what they have. As I mentioned earlier, he treated children in front of audiences, kind of used that power of a crowd of people. And just like early humanists, he believes the importance of the power of the therapeutic relationship. It reawakens social interest in people. And that's Alfred Adler in a nutshell.